With the launch of Season 4, there are new playlist races, new events, new feats, and so it's time to take a look at the legendary parts farming for Season 4. This is my farming guide. Let's go! Alright, real quick before we get into the methods, I want to give you a couple of notes regarding some previous methods, some little farming updates here. So there were some methods in the previous season that are no longer viable here in Season 4, mainly the Scene 4 and Scene 7 events from the Hollywood playlist. Those events now require you to hit every single checkpoint as opposed to just skipping to the end, and they don't reward as much as they used to, so ditch those methods. Alright, let's talk about the parts that you need in order to get this thing rolling. If you're a new player, this is going to be really important to you. If you're a veteran player, just skip to the section that you're interested in. There's timestamps in the description down below. Anyways, if you aren't at the max perf level, that should be step 1 for you. Each class has a maximum performance level indicated in the top right of the screen when you're looking at the category or your cars. Once you hit the max perf level, your goal is to get at least one legendary part per category so that you can maximize your chances of getting legendary parts. Hopefully you get a set of loot digger parts, which will then multiply the loot you earn for an event by 2. This speeds things up tremendously, but oftentimes because of RNG you won't actually get that full loot digger set until midway through your parts grind. Anyways, you should also increase your chances of dropping a legendary with your legend points. For your legend points, go to profile, then driver, then legend points, and make sure you have the Goldfinger and Lucky completely maxed out. This will increase your loot quality by 80% and your drop rate by 40%. Now, quickly for those who are still new to the game, there are 6 different set bonuses for your legendary parts: Nitro Chemist, Loot Digger, Score Breaker, Bucks Magnet, XP Magnet, and Treasure Sniffer. And there are 7 parts for your vehicle. And because the set bonus is something that you cannot change, it's the thing that defines what that part is. There are 42 individual legendary parts for each of the vehicles. So once you get a Treasure Sniffer suspension, as an example, you don't need a duplicate Treasure Sniffer suspension. You can just delete the next one that you get. Make sense? Alright. Let's get into the ground vehicles. These methods are for every single ground vehicle except for Dragsters. I'll talk about those in just a moment. The best method is the event called Hummer Express. It's in the Electric Odyssey playlist, and you must complete that entire playlist in order to start this event for other classes. The event requires a specific path in order to maximize your gains, and you're seeing that in the background gameplay, so make sure you're taking notes. Also, take notes of the reset that you have to do about halfway through. Now, here are the numbers after 10 runs, and keep in mind I have a full set of loot digger parts. Your drop rates will be less until you get a loot digger set. Now, I received a total of 82 parts for those 10 runs, 19 of which were legendary. That's a legendary drop rate percentage of 23.17%, and it took me approximately 15 minutes to do those 10 runs, and at that rate, you're looking at 328 parts per hour, and 76 of those parts should be legendary. The next closest method to this is Kiss Me Combi, which is in the vintage playlist. Again, you need to complete the playlist in order to be able to start it with other vehicle types, and it works with every single ground vehicle except Dragsters. Now, after 10 runs on Kiss Me Combi, I received 94 parts, 22 of which were legendary, which is a drop rate of 23.4, but it took a little more than 18 minutes, which means I would only get 302 parts per hour. 71 of those would be legendary. Now, these two methods are insanely close, and RNG could absolutely play a role in the percentage and the number of parts, but the point of this guide is really to highlight what's possible and what's to be expected in general. So your results may vary, and you may want to pick one or the other. Now, skill and the loading times to restart the event are also a factor, and they will vary by player, so keep that in mind as well. Someone on an older gen console, for example, might have longer loading times than someone on a high-end PC. Anyways, outside of that, there are 2 other methods that I tested, but I can't really recommend. Riding in my Buick, which is very good for both money and XP, doesn't really work for parts because it just doesn't reward enough parts for the amount of time that it takes to do the event. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not going to be the meta grind. You can expect around 50 to 60 legendary parts per hour if you can complete the race in under 3 minutes. And I tested one of the shortest events in the game, which is called Get It or Don't Come Back. It only takes about 30 seconds to complete this event, but again, the number of parts dropped is just not good enough. You can only expect 45 to 50 legendaries per hour, and unfortunately, even though that race is very similar to a drag race, you can't use dragsters on it. And speaking of, let's go ahead and talk about the best way to grind legendaries for your dragsters. There really isn't a good method, and I hate saying that, but each of these methods is completely painful, and I feel bad for anyone embarking on this journey. So first, and obviously, you can just grind out the drag events themselves. There are only 2 of them in the game, and that means there's literally no variety for you. This might be the most boring way to play this game, so I just don't really recommend it at all. What I do recommend is to do the feats and the treasure method. Basically, you can do any of the slaloms or escapes using another car, like a hypercar or an Alpha Grand Prix. Then, just before the event ends, you quick swap to a drag car and you'll be rewarded with drag parts. There are 67 slaloms and escapes combined, and it takes about 30 to 35 minutes to complete all of them when utilizing the fast travel feature. And if you're new to the game, once again, you unlock the fast travel by completing 10 playlists. Anyways, the method is simple. You complete 5 feats, then you look for a treasure box. Then you complete 5 feats, and you look for a treasure box. Only open purple or gold, and then you go back and do your feats again. Since the feats reward timer is 30 minutes, and you are putting treasure boxes in between each 5 that you do, you will never run out of feats. I suggest going to your map filters and filtering it to only show the slaloms and the escapes that you will receive rewards on. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, you need to be opening the treasure with your drag car. If you need a treasure map of all the possible spawns, I have it pinned in the crew channel of my Discord. There's a link to that in the description. All right, let's move on to planes and boats. Nothing has changed since my last video on legendary parts. The methods are the same and the rewards are basically the same, give or take a little bit due to RNG. For both of these categories, I do not have a set of loot digger parts when I did the testing, so it was all done with just Lucky and Goldfinger maxed out. The fastest event for planes is still Skyline Ride, which is the last event in the Ocean and Sky playlist. I recommend using the P51 Mustang as it's the fastest plane. I did 5 runs to get this data, and what I got was 5.4 parts per run with a legendary drop rate of about 33%, which means about 2 gold parts per run. Now the event takes 1 minute and 50 seconds to complete and about 20 seconds to restart, so if you're farming, you can do almost 27 runs per hour, which gives you 146 total parts and about 49 legendaries. Now to be clear, that's the data that I got, but I've not seen a drop rate that high in anywhere else in the game. Mostly the drop rates are between 20 and 25%, so I think I got some really good RNG during these test runs. I would say that a more realistic expectation is about 35 to 40 legendaries per hour. Anyways, let's move on to boats. For boats, the fastest event is still yacht surfing. I recommend using the V40R for this one because it's the fastest boat in the game in a straight line. This event earns you around 8 parts per run with the possibility of about 22 runs per hour. Its legendary drop rate is 22.5%, and that'll get you somewhere around 40 legendaries per hour. Again, these numbers are without Loot Digger, and they're based on a 5-run test. And lastly, I wanted to touch on treasure boxes a little bit because I know some people swear by this, but you can actually memorize all the treasure box spawn locations or refer to a map of them like the one I have in my Discord, link below once again. And then you can use the in-game map to just zoom in and out until you find a box, and then you can open it with the vehicle that you're trying to get parts for. And I think this is a great way to sort of break up your grind a bit, but I don't think this is very viable if you're just doing treasure. But I do suggest grabbing a box every 5 to 10 minutes. It does take a little bit longer than just racing, but again, gives you a little bit of a tiny break between your grinds, and they reward quite well, especially the gold and purple boxes. Anyways, that's it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this helps, as that's always the main goal of my content. I will catch you on the next one. Trigger out.